all eyes are on Georgia. And we know that those forces who are trying to suppress the vote are going to double their efforts in Georgia because of what's at stake. So in January 3rd, I believe, it is January 3rd, we will have the runoff in here in Georgia. There are troops descending upon Georgia right now as we speak. I gave myself 24 hours after when it was announced who the winner was, even though we thought we knew who the winner was, but when it's announced by the media, that's got to be confirmed, we understand that and certified, then I said I'm taking 24 hours just to rest because I hadn't slept more than 2 or 3 hours in days, like most of us who are out there and who were trying to affect the right to vote. So, and ensuring and protecting people's right to vote, especially in Black and brown communities. So 24 hours was all the time that people have given themselves to rest, but now they are descending upon Georgia, and for good reason. And so what that means is routinely people vote in the presidential election and they don't even worry so much about the interim elections. We've got to change that. We have to change the mindset. We have to have an effort to get out the vote, because people really, it took such energy to get people to vote early, to get people vote by ballot. We don't trust the mail, but to drop box and all of that, so that we had the incredible result that we had. Just think about this for a moment. By and large, Black and brown people voted early, and they voted by drop box and they voted with the mail, and that made a difference. And Biden-Harris won. Period. End of discussion. There's no, well, we hit period. End of discussion. Mm-hmm. So now we've got the short window, 2 months, less than 2 months really, to firm up the vote here in Georgia. And so we have heard about militia groups, white supremacy groups that are talking about abducting young Black men, young Black women, but the focus is on young Black men, and that we have to be on high alert. Well, if you live in the South and in the Deep South, you know about these issues anyway. But now, through reliable sources, through the NAACP and other organizations, we are getting information that we have to be careful. This is all intimidation. This is all voter suppression, election suppression, and it's not acceptable. So I have sent and issued a clarion call to our over 66,000 Black lawyers that are in this country, and we will continue to do that, that we must continue to protect the right to vote. It's not over. It's far from being over, and this is extremely important. So that's what I mean by our work ahead of us. We can't rest on our laurels. I gave myself 24 hours because it's our entire community. It's not just the Black lawyers or the Black doctors who are on point, by the way, with COVID, or political people or election people in different states. It's all of us, our entire community descending, and now all arrows point to Georgia.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that election in Georgia, that runoff for those 2 seats at this hour is as important as what happened on November 3rd.
Yes.
Because if you don't get Ossoff and Warnock in the Senate, have a majority, McConnell's already said he's going to even block cabinet appointments.
Yes.
So they'll continue to obstruct. The other thing folks have saying about National Bar Association, that's where competent and qualified prosecutors and judges can come from to employ in the government. And so if you don't have a Senate majority, then you don't have, if Biden and Harris don't have one, then you're not able to appoint a diverse array of lawyers and judges in the first place, because we know the Republicans are going to block them, right, CK?
Or anyone who needs Senate confirmation. I mean, imagine that. So we've got to, and we all know this new emerging movement to challenge the results of the elections,
right,
where the president is threatening to hold rallies. I mean, he's already said he would tell his people, well, let's just stand by and let's see what we would do. He announced this at the last presidential debate. Right. So we knew this was coming, but when it's here, it is perhaps scarier, because the life and the health of a nation sort of lies in the balance. And to be this vindictive, I mean, when you lose, you lose. No one likes to lose. But when, ironically, some of the states where they're challenging are states that the governors are Republican and the Secretary of State are Republican. The people who administered the elections in Georgia, Republican, and then how about Republican?
Yeah.
You know, our governor is a person who questionably beat Stacey Abrams. So we know what's going on there, and his Secretary of State, the people who administered the elections here in Arizona, the people who administered the elections there are Republicans. So this notion that we are challenging the results of the elections, no matter what, even if it's our own party, even if it's our own close friends, even if it's our close allies, is just sour grapes, unacceptable, and not what this country should be about. So we've got to put that aside and be monolithic and focused on what we need to do in terms of communities and people who believe in protecting the right to vote. Because I want people to understand that's what's at stake. It's not just Republican and Democrat. That's not what I'm talking about. The National Bar Association has to be nonpartisan in what it's doing. We are protecting the right to vote. Those Black and brown voters, those voters that came out and voted in this election in record numbers in Georgia, that turned Georgia from one to another, it's really not about being partisan. It's about people voting. And so those people, again, need to feel that they can vote without threat of intimidation, without seeing guns at the polls, because we're in Georgia. So we know people can carry guns, do whatever, even in the poll. And sometimes the police are not a constructive force. One of the things that the National Bar did in conjunction with the Advancement Project is we were negotiating MOUs, Memorandum of Understanding, with policing departments throughout the country, because we wanted the police to be a constructive presence and not destructive, and not one of intimidation. So whatever we saw in the presidential is going to get worse, and we have to be prepared. Let me tell you, I live down the street in Brookhaven, and there's a Target right down the street from me. That Target was boarded up from head to toe. I mean, just boarded up completely, because they were expecting, I guess, protests and riots as a result of the presidential elections and with whatever the results were. Well, all those stores that were hit previously by riots and that were concerned in Atlanta, none of that happened. Mm-hmm. It was all peaceful. We didn't see, I was on the National Command Center for the Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights as well. So we were seeing all of the complaints that were being escalated up, 1-866 our vote. We were seeing all of those, and there wasn't violence. There was a lot of intimidation at the polls, don't get me wrong. There were a lot of shenanigans at the polls. There was a lot of chicanery, but there wasn't violence. The lawyers and collars, the role, and you can appreciate this, Mark, the role of the clergy this time, the religious leaders, incredible in de-escalating situations at the polls. So we're going to need all that, because let's think about this. We have Reverend Raphael Warnock, who's running. Mm-hmm. Minister, senior pastor of Ebenezer Church, mm-hmm. Dr. King's Church, mm-hmm. in Atlanta. I'm getting just goosebumps when I'm talking about this.
Come on.
In Atlanta.
Yeah.
In Atlanta, Georgia. Well, Atlanta is the breadbasket of the civil rights movement, some would say. The home of the late Congressman John Lewis. We are right here in this place where this is playing out. So we can't rest on our laurels. We have to see justice wherever, as long as everybody votes, whatever the results are, they are. Because our concern is making sure that everybody feels like they can vote, they can get to the polls, free of intimidation, free of having a gun to their head, and free of feeling somehow that there's going to be danger. Because that's not what we're about in this country. That's not what we should be about. Children shouldn't feel, and like me, I have 2 sons. I have to feel like I've got to put in place extra measures to protect my children. Well, I'm going to do it. But we shouldn't have to feel that way simply for exercising the right to vote. That's what it is, the right to vote.
Yeah. No, very powerfully put. Have you, and obviously no judges have yet either, mm-hmm. but you've seen not 1 ounce of merit in any of the suits mm-hmm. that the Trump campaign has filed. Now, my understanding is the one they filed in Georgia was literally over 53 ballots.
That's right.
In Chatham County, and a judge didn't even give that any merit, right?
That's correct. Now, let me just say this. I haven't looked at all of them, but I have had access to, look at some of them. They're not going to have any real merit. And again, people do have the right. There's one thing about this country that we love. You do have the right to file suit. You do have the right to bring challenges. You do have the right to complain when something is wrong. You also have the right to throw something out of your judge when it's ridiculous. Some of these complaints are poorly, and again, not being critical of any lawyer and what they're doing. That's not what this is about. But if you're going to get out there, if you're going to go out there, if you're going to file something at this time, then you do open up yourself to people scrutinizing and looking at what you've done. A lot of the complaints just made no sense at all. And so there was, you have to, when you bring a complaint, there's a requirement in every state. I'm only licensed in 5 states, but I've done cases nationally. And every place I've ever been, you have to have what we call a good faith basis for bringing a claim. You can't just say, well, what happened was, I think, will it will. No, there's got to be good faith. There's got to be some form of modicum of evidence, not what you suspect, not what you speculate, not when it comes to voting, when you're making allegations of voter fraud. That's very serious. And by the way, in Georgia, you're pointing your finger at a Republican governor and if that's what you're trying to do, if you're saying, because it starts at the top, it ends at the top. You are accusing them of fraud. I'm certain that that's not the intent. But in filing these complaints that had very little merit, you get what you receive, what you put in. Many of them were dismissed. I don't believe that any of the pending lawsuits will change the outcome of the elections. That's the key. Will they change the outcome of the elections? And the answer is going to be a resounding no. I think what needs to happen is, and I know, again, we're all sore losers. Anyone who's Willie Gary, who I practiced with for years and still try cases with, said, you show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser. I mean, I hate to put it that way. Nobody wants to lose. So let's just, we get that. We get that. But in a democracy, when there's an election, somebody's going to win and someone's not going to win. And to simply say, I'm not going, you can't force me. Well, there are measures within our Constitution and within this country that one hopes not to have to exercise to remove the president from if he fails to go of his own volition. But, we don't want a civil war. Because what I see, and I am not a conspiracy theorist at all. I don't, that's not how I roll. I really don't. But what I see is the positioning of a lot of discomfort and a racial divide here, the growing of the schism, as opposed to us coming together as a country. And that's what I see, all of these threats of these town hall meetings, people lining up without having proper information, these lawsuits being filed. There are always challenges to presidential elections. There always are. But and that's why the Biden-Harris camp insisted on, let's wait till the end. People could have called the election almost on election night, but they didn't. They wanted to wait until the end, till the votes were counted, until there was certainty that there would not be an ability for either side to say, well, we didn't give it. So that's why I think there's going to be no chance of any of these legal challenges surviving and changing the outcome. That doesn't stop people from saying what they want to say, doing what they want to do, and being obstructionists. But I don't think that there's any possibility, in my humble impression, that they will cause a change in the result of the elections.
Just to be clear, and for the sake of our audience, from what I'm able to glean, just about every suit has been thrown out, except for a couple of technicalities in Philadelphia.
Right.
But beyond that, and those are a little bit questionable. Just about everything, Philadelphia, Michigan, Nevada, Arizona, have pretty much been thrown out, even in Georgia. Let me ask you this: as the National Bar Association is poised to protect our voting rights, is it also the protocol that I guess it would be, if there are continuing suits from the Trump campaign challenging voters, eligible voters, and ballots, will the National Bar Association be poised, if necessary, to weigh in on some of those matters?
Absolutely. We have had lawyers ready and in what we call the rapid response mode. So rapid response, jump in. We got more trial lawyers. We have so many trial lawyers in the National Bar Association till it's really uncanny. We have teamed up with the Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights. We have a lot of coalition partnerships that enable us all to be poised, because we have to have a coordinated effort. You don't want to have 10 groups doing the same thing.
Mhm.
But the national bar members, by the way, some national bar members have been involved in some of this litigation. What we don't see some of the lawyers who brought successfully some of the litigation in Pennsylvania. We just saw the results. Those were Black lawyers.
Mhm.
So I say that because throughout the country, the National Bar lawyers have been poised. We're just poised and ready. There are groups like Fair Fight, the Southern Poverty Law Center, Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights, the NAACP. All of these organizations are ready and poised to fight and have been fighting. So on behalf of the National Bar Association, this was our mandate. We got our mandate from the late Congressman John Lewis and Reverend Jesse Jackson. March 2nd, 2020. Mark, who knew that would be the last time that I would see this magnificent Congressman John Lewis in his office in Atlanta? I met with he and Reverend Jackson because both of them were going to speak on our election protection series at our annual conference in July, which turned out to be virtual. And so because I was going to be sworn in at the end of July, I asked both of these civil rights icons, I asked them for guidance. I asked them for guidance in terms of the priorities that I should execute and in my mandate as president of the National Bar Association and with the election protection effort. And this is what they both said. They said, we marched, we did our part so the people could vote. It is up to African-American and Black lawyers in this country to protect the right to vote. That's what you need to do. That was on March 2nd, 2020. I was sworn, and I chaired the election protection effort last year when I was president-elect. So they didn't need to tell me twice. And that is what we did. So by the time we got to all this, what we're doing now, we were poised, we were ready. We formed alliances with the Divine Nine. I have to share this, Mark, with you. The Divine Nine, the AKA stepped up to the plate first. Over 800 women, AKA lawyers, registered and worked with the National Bar. The Kappas said, we're not going to be outdone. The Kappas came on board. The Qs came on board. The Alphas came on board. The Deltas came on board. So you see, and we are continuing that alliance because it was successful. It was successful to see the Divine Nine step up. So we just believe in coalition groups. We also formed a partnership or a coalition with AHA, just trial lawyers who believe in protecting the right to vote. So this was not haphazard. This was by design, our efforts. The National Bar Association has always been on point when it came to election protection. We just took it to a different level this time, broadened our coalition because the stakes were higher. In my lifetime, I never really felt like democracy was at stake as much as this election. That I never really felt that there was a need on this level for Black lawyers to step up to the plate. We've always been there, but step up, elevate our efforts, and refuse to be denied. Be there for our communities. Because there's one thing that no other profession, Mark, this can do other than us.
Yeah.
Go into court. Let's go into court.